And this hangout is live.
That was so much more slurping.
Bitches. Welcome to the 6th edition of the Ultimate Man's League podcast. This is Commish Doug Gardner here with you as always. Today we have two slurping guests in the owner of the UML champion Fossey fullbacks, Connor Hemian, as well as the owner of Queef Wellington, which is disgusting, Carlo Bon Tempo. How you doing, fellas?
I'm all right.
Thanks for having us, Doug.
It's gonna be a great show. We haven't had two guests on before. We'll keep the same format that we have in the past to get everything going here in the proper way. We'll do a little bit of Week 5 recap. We'll look ahead to some power rankings, which Carlo did this week, and then we'll look ahead to some Week 6 matchups, do some Game of the Week, and then a couple of cool segments there at the end as well. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn on the screen share so you guys can see more information instead of just me talking. All right. And then I will go ahead and get over to the UML page from the scoreboard from last week. So, Carlo, you ended up doing pretty well this week, 146 to 127 versus D's Nate's. What worked so well for you here against Nate?
Well, it worked so well. I can tell you what didn't work well. Isaiah Crowell hasn't been good for me whatsoever this year. I would say Keenan Allen can continue to get good targets. I can't believe how good Zach Ertz has been. That's been a big surprise. I mean, I knew that I was going to be deficient at tight end giving up Jordan Reed, but Ertz has been so good for me. So he's been good. The Eli and Odell Beckham injury, or the Eli thing and the Odell Beckham injury, kind of sucked for me going forward. But I guess I was just able to pull it out this week. I mean, respect to who did I play? Who did I even play this week? I forget.
It was D's Nate's.
All right. Well, respect to Nate. His team is fucking abysmal. But I mean, at least he had Aaron Jones have a good game.
Yeah, Nate seems to be working the way where improving a little bit every week. Connor, what do you think this Odell Beckham injury means for a Queef Wellington team that probably still expects to make the playoffs? Connor?
Hey, Connor, Doug asked you a question.
Okay, talk to me.
I said, what do you think this Odell Beckham injury is going to mean rest of the season for a Queef Wellington team that probably is expecting to make the playoffs?
Well, it affects his quarterback, which is a huge deal, on top of the fact that he spent a first-round pick on a guy that's now out, when he could have had, Fournette or, I mean, even at this point now with not even 5 weeks in, he's going to lose out on another player and even like a McCaffrey. So, maybe he should have gone running back with how the way Crowell's played and how Beckham Jr.'s gone out now quick. Maybe he should have listened to old Connor about drafting running backs.
Yeah, especially because that Crowell thing didn't work out.
Connor, I mean, it's what he said is true. I mean, I didn't really see having Adam Thielen as such a late round draft pick. If I had picked a running back in that first round and knew I was going to have Thielen later on, I think I would have had a solid wide receiver depth considering how good Devontae Adams has been. I would, in hindsight, I really would have liked Fournette. Melvin Gordon's been good. I guess respect to the other teams for taking making some solid picks in the first round. But I mean, that's just my luck with having Deion Lewis go down as my first round pick last year, and then the same thing happened to Beckham this year. And one more point about that too is just the fact that the Giants' offense is decimated too. So not only is Beckham went down, but Brandon Marshall went down too, and Orleans Stark was. So it really affects Manning much more too. So it was a double whammy between Beckham going down and then Eli Manning not having any pieces around him to still play well.
All righty. Moving on to Connor's game here. Fossey fullbacks vanquished the Dad Punchers 129 to 119. Connor, you escaped with one here, didn't you?
I did. I had a moment where me trading away Murray early in the year, it felt like I just stabbed myself in the back. Luckily, I didn't have to worry about that. I had everyone. My bench is useless. Literally everyone's on bye or injured. So the fact that I could pull out this win was huge. It puts me in the right direction. This was a game where, this could really set me back, and I got away with it. I mean, I had a kicker pretty much tie my highest score this week, and I still came out with the win. And I needed it.
Connor came out with a win without having a player score more than 20 points.
That's a good point. Carlo, what do you think the long-term outlook is for this Dad Punchers team? He's got some young talent here, no?
For we're talking about Joe's team. Long term, I mean, Gurley's been good. And I know that Joe made that trade for Will Fuller last year. I know that's like one of his favorite players. So to see him have some success as of late has been good for him, especially with how great Deshaun Watson has been. And Joe's got wide receiver depth. If he wants to, if he's going to be one of those, either a pooper team or someone that's going to be in the first pick tournament, if he wants to keep his wide receiver pieces or make a trade with someone who's going to be making a playoff push, he has the pieces.
Yeah, he surely does. Last word on this one, Connor?
I won. Fuck yeah.
All right.
Watson's good.
Yeah, he is. Watson's good. I thought it might have been a little premature with everyone trying to anoint him, and then he goes out and flames the Chiefs for 5 touchdowns. A really surprising game here, Tim versus Alex. The Petersburg Penguins fall for the first time this year to the previously winless Pain Train, 157-136. Carlo, what was the reason that Alex finally got off the schneid?
I'm looking at the wrong scoreboard. Have Connor answer that first.
All right, Connor.
I'm just surprised why you say it's a surprise. I think that Tim's team, although it's had success, it's not elite. I don't see why he can't lose. I mean, he had to start McGuire in his starting lineup and Hill this week. I think a loss was headed his way, as good as his team has performed. Fournette is a knockout pick. I think that's going to be something that's going to go with him for a long time. He's got 31 points out of Fournette this week, but it wasn't enough because the rest of his team, as well, it's been performing these past few weeks with luck. I think that this team isn't going to be all it's cracked out to be so far. That being said,
Chris Hogan too.
Well, yeah, Chris Hogan's been solid, but that being said, the Pain Train isn't exactly everyone's go-to team to expect to win. I think that McKinnon's got a game that's never going to happen again with 26 points. Not that McKinnon wasn't good to pick up, and Martin looks like he's going to be a pretty good running back, and I think he's going to have that out of it. But I mean, he just dropped Devontae Foreman, who might have been an answer later in the year, and he just dropped him out of nowhere. And he's playing a backup running back for no one. I don't understand where his running backs are. I think that his running backs are still so weak that he's not going to make it up. But he got to win this week.
Is McKinnon going to be the number one going forward for the Minnesota, you think?
I think you'll see a timeshare there in Minnesota. They gave 12 carries to Latavius Murray. I think it's going to be similar to what you've seen in years past when they had Matt Asiata. I think you'll see Latavius Murray play a little bit more of that Asiata role while McKinnon stays in that same role.
McKinnon just can't be the lead. That's the problem. He's talented, but he can't do it.
Now, on this about this Petersburg Penguins team, you mentioned the home run pick of Leonard Fournette. And I was talking to my dad the other day, and he actually pointed out something. My brother seems to always agonize over his first-round pick. Well, now he doesn't need to. He can put Leonard Fournette in that first-round pick until the guy retires, basically. He's going to be a workhorse running back on a team that wants to run the ball and more importantly, is afraid to throw the ball because they have Blake Bortles. So Leonard Fournette is an absolute stud. I actually heard a stat that he has scored a touchdown in every football game he's ever played in. That includes the NFL, college, and high school. So that's there's your weird stat of the day.
Better than TJ Yeldon.
That's true. Moving on to the next game, you have Team Man Bear Pig versus Suck My Ditka and PU, 98-71. Carlo, explain Steve's team to the rest of the league, please.
Explain Steve's team?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's hard. As far as Steve's team, I mean, when I think of Steve's team, I think about the Jordan Howard trade. I mean, he's got the Vikings defense, but really the Jordan Howard trade. You think about that trade, and you think about, like, did his team get better? Did Alex's team get better? And they're the two teams that are in last place right now. So you look at that trade, and neither team got better from that trade. So as far as his outlook for the rest of the season, it looks bleak. He's got Devontae Parker as a starter who just went down this past week. Brandon Cooks, he has his boom bust games, but it seems like Hogan is the lead receiver in that offense. And then McKissick, I like McKissick, but he wouldn't be a starter in our league, honestly.
Yeah, he's a good bench thing. AJ gets the win here, Connor, but is it smoke and mirrors? I mean, this team is 3-2 now. It's looking less and less likely like he's going to repeat as the toilet seat champion. What moves has AJ made to pull himself out of the basement of the league?
Duke Johnson.
Or do you think he's still down there?
Well, on draft day, there were decisions made that I think have really changed the outlook for his team. You look at Duke Johnson, you look at McCaffrey, he suddenly has running backs, which he's never had. I think something that he did himself was Goff. I'm looking at stuff and I'm trying to make this relate, but some of his picks have done horribly here that I would say in terms of the year have actually been pretty great, which is Goff and which has been Allen Hurns as a pickup. Jesse James has come through every once in a while. I feel like he has pieces that make sense that don't always perform, but at least he has those pieces every once in a while, and that's how he's won some games. He's got Chris McCaffrey solid for 10 to 12 points. Duke Johnson starting to really shine. His wide receivers took a hit this week, but I think overall Kenny Stills is a deep sleeper. Eric Decker is Eric Decker. He hasn't really been too fantastic, but he's a player. Allen Hurns was a good pickup last week, not so much this week, but he could improve here or there. He had the insight to pick up Smith as a tight end from Tennessee. He got 7 points out of that. It's not nothing. It's something to walk away from and say, at least I found, some kind of viable option. He plays the free agency well. Jack Doyle was out. He had to do something. He found something, and he plugged it in. He's got Nelson Aguilar on the bench who got almost 20 points. He's making moves to improve his team every week. And I think that's going to save him on top of finally having a few running backs to work with from the draft this year.
I'm hoping Jack Doyle, finally have some production once Luck gets back. We'll see.
Yeah. We will see indeed. Rabbit College Rampage defeat the White Sharks 145-125. Carlo, break down this game for us.
Melvin Gordon, he's pretty good. As far as White Sharks, that's Steve's team, right?
No, this is Adam's team.
Adam's team. Oh yeah. Well, as far as Adam's team, Melvin Gordon's pretty good. I think both of his touchdowns were on pass catches, if I remember correctly. Carson Wentz seems to be a real deal too. Yeah, like I said, I like having Ertz on my team, and Carson Wentz is also a benefactor from having Ertz on his team. Amendola was able to put together a week having a few receptions. Granted, that game was freaking boring as hell, and there was no offense. But going forward, he has Matt Prater on his team. Isn't he the guy that missed games because he he drank too much or something?
Yeah, I think that's him.
I think maybe he's hoping that LaShawn McCoy goes down because he has a handcuff he has my handcuff in the Buffalo backfield. And then, he has Jamal Williams too, which, it looks like Aaron Jones is going to be the beneficiary of Montgomery going down. So we'll see what happens going forward with his team.
Well, give us some insight, Connor, into what's going on with this Rampage team and what you would do if you were the owner of this team to try to get back on track. Because he beats Adam here, but he's still just 2-3, and he's been really hit or miss. What's going on with this team?
Well, honestly, I was looking at Adam's team, and I have some things to point out with his team too. But I feel like he needs to plug in Ellington. I don't know why that hasn't happened yet. Ellington seems to get the ball plenty. Murray is struggling right now. Mixon is still getting there. He's in the process. He started to really perform this week. He got 11 points. But, when you have Ajayi, Murray, and Mixon, and then you see Andre Ellington put up the points he's had as a pass-catching back, that's something I feel like your dad's not really understanding, is that pass-catching backs get you so many points. And I feel like he needs to plug that in immediately. Funches is looking like a great pick after a year or two of me wondering why he picked him at all. I think that he needs to plug him in. I feel like it's honestly just a plug-and-play situation where he's got so many role players on the same wavelength that his struggle is picking the right ones. I feel like he has so much talent on his bench that equals his starters that he needs to just know when to play the right player at the right time.
So do you think
through it?
Do you think he should package some of these guys and go out and get a star?
He could do that. I don't think that's a bad move.
Ajayi hasn't had a good game yet. He should wait for him to blow up and then sell high on him. And then with Murray, he hasn't been playing well. He hasn't been playing well. I think he's been injured. He's been injured, and then between him and Derrick Henry being in that backfield too, he hasn't been getting the bulk share of the carries.
That's a good point as well. I think we'll talk about trades a little bit more later on. But Connor, why don't you go ahead and take the last word on this one?
I just want to speak to Adam personally here for a second. I'm looking at his bench. Kevin White's not coming back. Drop him. Free your IR spot. You can throw in Coleman. You can throw in Coleman, or if you wanted to, for luck. I mean, he might be back soon, hopefully, for his sake. But you can throw one of those two guys in there. The rest of your bench is hurt. I understand how you feel, but you go to John Ross's stats right now. John Ross has 0, -0.8 in the game he played. 0, 0, 0. And now he's on.
But Connor, he's fast.
Drop him, please, for the love of God. Drop him. Drop so many players. Like Gabriel, you can keep him. He'll be back. Whatever. He could put up a crazy week every here and there. Rob Kelly, you can't get rid of. Mariota. But you could drop that IR spot, free up a bench spot, and then also drop John Ross. You got 2 free spots right there. 2 players to play with. Go find something, please.
And Jamal Williams as well.
And Jamal Williams is useless. It's clearly Adams is the guy. You got 3 roster spots right there. Go at any. You could have no idea what to pick up, but if you pick up 3 guys, at least you have odds to do something with them. Anything.
Yeah, 0 points from his bench. I know a lot of these guys are hurt, but 0 points from his bench this week.
Melvin Gordon's a guy to build around, but he hasn't kept as a first-round pick.
That's true. Moving on, you have Ray versus Pat, Snatchers versus Bush. Connor, why don't you go ahead and tell us what's going on with Ray's team here, why he seems to be somewhat consistent.
Well, this is a big game. I think these are 2 teams that are trying to prove themselves. I mean, Pat won a couple of years ago, but I feel like people took that as kind of a luck over, necessarily being a team to be messed with for the long term. But I feel like these are 2 teams that really wanted to go at each other and show that they're the better team. And Ray's team had some big-time problems. Cohen's starting to look iffy, I think, with this new quarterback in place with Trubisky. Maybe if people thought Cohen would benefit from it, I don't think that's going to be the case. And I think that his running backs are starting to look into question. He's going to have,
Big
Coleman,
Ben too.
He's going to have Coleman and Ingram back, which should make his team, still consistent running back. But Rodgers is done with now. Martin's clearly back. Cohen isn't looking like that fantastic grab that he got early in the year. And, I mean, even Allen, on certain weeks, is it going to be him or is it going to be the what's his name there? The new
Alex
guy.
Collins.
Alex Collins. He hasn't won that backfield himself. Diggs is hurt. Crabtree finally came back from injury. Looks great, so that's the good news. Shepard could be the guy in New York now. So, I mean, his wide receivers are still intact. He lost Charles Clay for who knows how long. Croft isn't going to be the tight end anymore. He's got some answers he has some questions he needs answering that hopefully he will have answered. But I see a lot of struggle in what he's got going on, and that's where Pat came in and took it this week. I think that there's a lot going wrong for Ray that can be fixed very easily. I think his team's still very good, but I think Pat had that kind of momentum of a struggle for him right now.
All right, Carlo, Pat's won 2 in a row. He sits here at 3-2. I think he's 5th or 6th in scoring. Is his team back?
It's as long as Alex Smith continues to play well. I mean, having that stack of Smith and Travis Kelce on your team, especially this year. Kelce went down with a concussion, but I think he had 9 receptions before that even happened. So he was able to get positive, good games out of those 2. With Lamar Miller, he has every opportunity to be the guy for the Texans, with a giant workload, but he hasn't had a big blow up game yet. Marshawn Lynch, who knows if he's, going to be consistent this year. With Jarvis Landry seems to be, the guy going forward in the Miami wide receiving core with Devontae Parker going down. I like him as a PPR guy, just having that baseline of receptions all the time. But, I mean, Alex Smith, he's been such a revelation for him. He's been good. And Jay Cutler on the bench, that's pretty funny. And then it sucks having, Moncrief as a depth guy and him not doing too much of anything this year.
Yeah, that's another one of those situations where I think having Andrew Luck come back will be a major beneficence to Pat's team. Last game of this week, I believe, anyway, is Murder Muppets, Toad Point Trippers. Muppets lose 137-170. Carlo, break down my team here. Tell me what's not working. Why have I lost 2 in a row?
Well, Gillislee. I mean, yeah, it's that crowded Patriots backfield. You never know who's going to go off that week. I mean, you used your first on Gillislee. I'm really wondering why you liked Gillislee so much in that first round. Granted, you can always drop him at the end of the year and have your first round pick open. But maybe I guess I see why you probably thought he had the best upside out of all the players in that first round. I mean, Kareem Hunt still continues to play well. Having him kept in the 4th round on your team is pretty nice. Tyreek Hill had a pretty sick punt return for a touchdown. That was pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, you just got to figure out your quarterback situation, man. I'm not the guy to go through for a trade. Maybe someone else is, but yeah, figure out the quarterbacks and maybe you have a chance of actually making some noise in the playoffs. We'll see.
Connor, we'll talk about your dad's team more in a little bit, but what do you think? What do you think some of these other teams that you're talking about that have like teams with talent deficiencies the way mine does? What do you think that they could do? Using examples from my team, what do you think that they could do to improve a bad roster?
Constantly play the waiver wire. Maybe see kind of something that a lot of people don't see with trades is you have someone who's hot for a couple of weeks that you could sell off. It's called a sell high, buy low kind of trade where you can understand. I'm trying to think of an example right now. In some extent, Kareem Hunt right now, you could say with the past few weeks he's had where he had 40 something points, almost 30 points again. You got to think that's not reasonable to go through the year. So, obviously having Kareem Hunt is great and you want to keep him regardless, but maybe you could have the mindset to say, hey, I have this player that's putting up points that aren't going to go the entire year. And if they do, that it'd break NFL records. You could have that kind of player and say, I could get 3 or 4 players, well, maybe not 4, but 2 or 3 players that could equal more points than even if he were to do that the whole year. You could get a wide receiver and a tight end that could give you a bunch of points when you trade that running back. It's all about the value of more is less. When you have maybe a guy who's doing really well on your team, he's not going to win you every week. You can't put your team on his shoulders and score all these points. If you can get a 2 to 3 player trade for one of your players, suddenly your team has some of those holes filled. I feel like that's the secret to improving when you're in the bottom half of the league.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk more about Kevin's team here in a little bit, but why don't we go ahead and switch gears and talk about the this week's power ranking tiers. Carlo completed these, and at the top is Kevin's Toad Point Trippers. Carlo, why did you rank Kevin here? And is there any reason to think that he's going to lose at any point this year?
Unless he has some injury-prone guys, he has to have some serious injuries happen to his team. He basically has to go full nuclear in regards to injuries and have something similar to happen to Connor happen to his team. God forbid that sort of thing happens, because I have T.Y. Hilton in my big money league. So
you heard it here first, guys. Carlo does not think the UML is his most important league. You heard it here first.
Dude.
Boo.
I'm assuming you're having some screen difficulties here, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn off my screen share.
I mean, beyond this year, in regards to Kevin's team, he has Drew Brees kept in round 1. He has Frank Gore in round 4, Jeremy Hill in round 5. I mean, he could have some good, solid, he could win the championship this year and have some solid draft picks in the draft next year. And even looking down like the list, round 16, 17, and 18, he has players capped with Dak Prescott, James White, and T.Y. Hilton. He could be a force this year and then also pick up some solid draft picks for next year and continue to be a force.
Nice. Connor, what are your thoughts on Kevin's roster here? Just for 2017, we'll ignore keepers for a second since Carlo kind of went and touched on that already.
I mean, like I said with my bold prediction, there's a chance that he doesn't lose a game this year. I mean, I know what it's like to have gone through that last year. But, I mean, he has a lot of the same kind of structure that I had. You know, he's got running backs that can perform. He's got Bell. You know, he's got he's not so much like my team was last year. He's got kind of this weird buddy system where, you know, one week a running back can do really great for him, another week another one can. I feel like if there was a chance that he's going to lose, maybe he picks the wrong guy to start all of a sudden. You know, maybe he plays James White over Thompson. It could have happened a couple weeks ago. He could have had Thompson sitting on his bench when he was getting those 30 points and played White when he got, 4. That could have meant the game for him. I think that's the only way I see him losing. I think it's all about how he plays the players he has. He has the means with his bench and his starting lineup. I think he has one of those weird, White first world problems where it's like, who do I start this week to get me the most points? That could be what actually makes him lose.
True story. The second tier that Carlo has here are playoff contenders. Carlo, can you explain a little bit about why the teams that are in this tier are in this tier? Like, what does this tier mean?
Well, the playoff contender, I mean, the league is so wide open this year. It was hard to narrow down on a few teams that would make the playoffs. I think I put, more than, considering that Kevin's team is in the tier on its own, that means that leaves 5 other teams that would make the playoffs. But, with the league being as wide open as it is this year, with a lot of 3-2 and 2-3 teams, it's hard to zero in on 5 teams. So I think I put like 7 teams in this tier.
There's 6 teams in this tier, yeah.
6 teams in the tier. So, I mean, it's so wide open. I think I had Tim's team in the tier. Him starting 4-1 was good for him. He lost against one of the 1-4 teams, which kind of sucks. But, he was able to stockpile some wins. But, his luck could start running out because he has matchups against teams like Connor, teams like Kevin, teams like Doug's. But, I still like his team. Even if he does have a few of those losses, I still feel like he has the pieces to win a few games as well. Connor's team, I think Connor is smart enough to make the waiver wire pickups to continue to be competitive and win some games. He just has the depth. I mean, he was able to beat Joe without having a player go over 20 points because he has players that have nice baselines. And then even with a team like your team, Doug, Pat's team as well, there's a bunch of teams that, are definitely in playoff contention this year. It was hard to narrow down on a few of them. But this is the most wide open I have seen the league ever been in the 5 years that I've been in the league, for sure.
Cool. Connor, what do you think about this tier? Is there a team that you think maybe doesn't deserve to be in this tier, or do you think Carlo pretty much hit the nail on the head with these teams all have a shot at making the playoffs?
I think I would break these up into 2 categories, probably, and I'd include some of his next tier coming up. So, I mean, I feel like Ray, Pat, myself, and Carlo should definitely be in this tier. I think there's a lower place.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so basically I'm saying you, Doug, and then your brother. I think that they're like your team had some hot starts. I think that you're still in playoff contention. I'm not going to say you're not going to make the playoffs, but I'm going to say that you should have some kind of breakup between the two. I feel like our teams compared to your teams should have some kind of divider. I would say that they're playoff hopefuls rather than contenders with you and your brother.
That's a valid point here. With the next tier, these are the first choice tournament teams. Carl, these are the teams you aren't expecting to make the playoffs. You got Adam, my dad, and Joe Nuska's dad punchers in here. Is that a fair assessment of what this tier means?
I believe so. But I mean, I did a lot of these tiers based off a lot of the records that were already in the standings, as well as the points scored for each team. With the bye weeks coming up, these are teams that just don't have a lot of depth on their roster, and we'll have to rely on waiver wire pickups in order to compete with other teams that are more hopeful and be able to make the playoffs. So I feel like it's accurate. I mean, with these teams, they really only have one stud on each roster. But they still, a lot of these teams have young players that I like as far as like the future goes. I mean, with Joe with Gurley comes to mind immediately. Doug Sr. with J.J. and Joe Mixon. It's just unfortunate that they've had rough seasons to start so far. But I mean, I just don't see them more than teams than just being first pick tournament fodder.
That's a good point. Connor, is there any reason to think that any of these teams will make the playoffs?
Well, one of the things that I always look to is points scored in a matchup. That's where my last argument with Carlo with his power rankings laid. You have my dad clearly ahead with 885 points, which is ungodly compared to the rest of the points scored. You have Carlo next, myself third. Fourth is Ray, but you get down and you see Joe's team having his problems and losing to me on probably my worst bye week I'm going to have. He still has more points than Tim, yourself, Doug Sr. I think that Joe, as much as, Joe has his problems, and I feel like, he's going to be this way all up until the last week of the season, I think, with getting into the playoffs. I think he's going to stick around, and I think he's going to be able to put up the points on the right weeks. He won't go away. I think he's going to be a playoff contender. So I think that he has a real good shot.
Yeah, well, that's the thing with Joe and it's always been that Joe plays his fantasy team very conservative, wanting to build through the draft. When he made that trade for Will Fuller last year, it was actually pretty out of character for him. You don't see Joe making moves that are high risk very often, and I think you kind of end up seeing it. Why he always finishes 5-8, 6-7, 7-6. I think he had 1 year 8-5 a few years ago. But Joe, kind of. Like, I don't think Joe's ever going to be a contender for the toilet seat, but his ceiling right now is sneaking in with a 6 seed. Maybe some of these young players. He does have a lot of young players on his team.
There's reasons to be optimistic about Joe's team because, I mean, he has Amir Abdullah, who's getting a lot more of the carries in that offense as opposed to Theo Riddick. And Rashard Matthews is, like, the number one receiver in that Tennessee Titans offense.
I think one of the biggest reasons he lost is because Gurley had a game that he's not going to have every week. He only got 5 points. I don't think that's going to be Gurley's floor most weeks. I think I got him on a good week, I think. I think Gurley's going to put up points pretty much every week, and that's going to be a key to his success. Well, if he doesn't, then he will be in trouble. Yeah,
Gurley's got a really tough schedule coming up here over the next month. We'll see if he's really going to be reverted back to this 2015 form or if he's going to be more like last year. Moving on to the final tier, we have the squatters. These are the teams doing anything they can possibly do to avoid the toilet seat. 4 teams in your tiers here, Carlo. You got Alex, Nate, Steve, and AJ. And this is Steve's first visit to this tier. Carlo, why is Steve in the squatters tier?
The Jordan Howard trade hurts him. Well, I mean, it hurts him and it hurts Alex too. But like I said before, that trade didn't do anything for either one of those teams. Didn't make either team better in the grand scheme of things. I feel like his team can make noise next year if he makes some solid draft picks. But as far as his trading track record goes, it doesn't look good. I mean, if I were him, I would have been really scared in the first game of the season when I saw Tariq Cohen looking as good as he did. But it looks like Jordan Howard has overtaken the primary role as running back in that offense. So at least he has that going for him.
Connor, this is a tier that's no one wants to be down here. I've been down here. A lot of guys have been down here. Which team's not going to climb out of it?
Nate. I think Nate's team is not going to.
Agreed.
So your bold prediction is Nate. Where's the toilet seat at the 2018?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that the 4 teams in here are here for a reason, and seeing any of them continue to be here is not going to be shocking. But Nate's team is kind of almost taken on the problems with Alex's team these past few weeks, where he suddenly doesn't have running backs anymore. Gallman was a good pickup, but I don't think it's enough. I mean, the Giants' offense is something to really take part in. I feel like he's got a lot of players that are interesting, but they're just on offenses that aren't going to click. And I think Tom Brady looks old. I think Tom Brady's still going to be a valuable play for him, but the way he played against Tampa really concerned me. I feel like if he was going to have a player to kind of stand out and take over his team, it would be Brady, and I just don't think he could carry that weight. And I just think his team's going to continue to lose.
That's a fair argument. I will say, though, that, not to belabor the point, though, Alex really did a lot of harm to the league on draft day with those two trades. Ruined his own team, ruined Steve's team, ruined Nate's team. But, Nate, I understand Nate really likes to have good quarterbacks. It's kind of the formula that you had been using for a while there, Connor, if you remember.
And that's why I changed it.
Yeah, but when you just take a step back and look at it with a little bit of objectivity, which, not being involved in the trades, we all can. Nate traded his best player, Rob Gronkowski, for a 40-year-old quarterback who was a round one keeper. Like when you just
probably thought that he was going to compete in the league this year. I mean, that's the only reason I can think of that he would make that trade. It doesn't benefit him going into the future. I mean,
right, but the only reason Nate was a formidable team last year was because he had Gronk and he had other good players. Like the fact that he gutted his roster to go get Tom Brady when, frankly, he didn't need Tom Brady. He could have drafted Matt Stafford and kept Rob Gronkowski and been way better. Would you rather have Matt Stafford and Rob Gronkowski or Tom Brady and a ham sandwich, which is what he's starting out there right now? So I think that, Nate's Nate's an active owner, but at the end of the day, he needs to I think he just needs to stop having Jim syndrome where he just takes players from his favorite team and builds his team around Giants players, especially because the Giants are the worst team in the NFL right now, except maybe the Browns, and even that's tenuous.
Even to your point, in regards to the draft board, having Gronk in the late rounds and then having Stafford in the second or third round is much better than having Tom Brady in the first round.
Yeah, that's a solid point. Why don't we go ahead and change gears and look ahead to some of these Week 6 matchups? The first one will be White Sharks versus Suck My Ditka. Now, Connor, the lineups aren't completely set here yet, but it looks like Steve's going to be projected to win pretty favorably. Is this a must-win game for both teams? Connor?
I don't see Connor.
Yeah, I think we might have lost Connor here for a second. Carlo, why don't you go ahead and answer the question?
Well, he's got some. I was gonna say Steve has some favorable matchups. It's hard to tell with Adam's team because he doesn't have his lineup set. But as far as it being a must-win, yeah, it's a must-win for Steve. I guess it's a must-win for both teams. But I mean, Steve's got Matt Ryan going against Miami, who's been they've been awful this year. And then we'll see what kind of game Mitch Trubisky puts together in his second start. Granted, it's against the Ravens defense. But as far as Adam's team goes, I'm looking at his, Connor made all these points about his bench and having all these players with these injuries. I'm not really sure who you can plug in those spots where he needs coverage. I mean, you can plug in Rob Kelly as opposed to Mike Tolbert. But as far as wide receivers go, he's got Corey Coleman on IR. Kevin White on IR. He's going to have to make a play on the waiver wire for a wide receiver this week. Granted, I'm not sure what's really available at wide receiver for him, but I don't really see any sort of scenario where Adam wins this game unless maybe Carson Wentz has another week like he did last week, or Melvin Gordon carries the load again.
I concur. I think this is going to be a story of two teams kind of dealing with the muck and mire of the bottom end of the league. Moving
Is Connor
on,
back yet?
I don't believe so. We'll move on and go right ahead to the 4-1 Petersburg Penguins versus the 5-0 Toad Point Trippers. This has to
be the game of the week.
This is the game of the week. Now, Kevin has just been an absolute buzzsaw to everyone. Tim's got a lot of bye weeks. Carlo, is there any reason to think that Tim might have a shot at the upset, or is he just walking into walking the green zone here?
Kevin keeps getting the breaks. He's fortunate to be playing a 4-1 team when they have a lot of players on a bye. It looks like he's going to be starting Chris Thompson this week. He's been a bit of a revelation for him, considering that he had Danny Woodhead in his starting lineup and he went down, but he just was able to have Chris Thompson on his bench and be able to produce for him. A lot of times in which Kevin's actually started Chris Thompson, so that plays into him having such a high point total. Drew Brees is starting this week after having a bye. I'm really interested in seeing. I know Alvin Kamara's not on his team, but I'm interested in seeing how they have Alvin, what Alvin Kamara does in that offense to see how involved he is. What's funny about the trade that we did this offseason is that Emmanuel Sanders is actually going to be starting on his team. And even with Jordan Reed starting on his team, he also has Vernon Davis too. So even when Reed is down or when he's not starting, he is Vernon Davis. And whenever Vernon Davis is starting, he seems to put up the same sort of production that Jordan Reed can. So it's just he's firing on all cylinders right now. Not even I know that's a saying, but it's really true. His team has really no weakness. So as far as Tim's team goes, he has a lot to overcome with the buys. So it's like another one of the projection. He's projected to win by 60 points. Granted, he doesn't have all of his players. He doesn't have his lineup set. But it's just in one of those. I think this is a week where we can kind of see that we already know who's going to win each matchup. I mean, granted, we've only done 2 previews so far, but it's clear as day that it looks like we're gonna have a 6-0 team in the league now.
Sure. We'll go ahead and I already did this one. Click the wrong one. Well, let me go ahead and move on to this long bushes versus dad punchers. Pat versus Joe. It looks like there's still some lineup conjuring to be done, but it looks like a pretty close projection here. Who you got?
2-3 against 3-2. As far as who I have, I'm looking at the matchups right now. Phillip Rivers against Oakland, a division matchup that will be tough for him. Hopefully he can get a solid game out of Mike Evans, but he's playing that Arizona defense that has Matheu and Peterson as cornerbacks or whatever. So hopefully his studs can actually come through and play well for him. Hopefully Jarvis Landry has a nice game. Alex Smith, he just continues to play so well. I like him a lot in that matchup with Pittsburgh. We'll see if Travis Kelce actually starts this week. I'm not sure. I haven't really heard too much news about him. I expect him to play. I mean, the whole play where he got a concussed, it wasn't anything like Devontae Adams, and he was able to play this week. So I see Kelce being able to play. Joe really needs this one, though. I mean, I really hope Joe makes the playoffs, but he would certainly be in a hole at 2-4.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think at the end of the day, I think Pat has a superior team, but it's this one's definitely not one that I would put any sort of money on. We have lost Connor for the remainder of the show, so it's just gonna be you and me going forward. But we got Connor versus Ray. Connor, again, the lineups haven't been set. Guys, try to set your lineups early so that we can talk about them accurately. But Connor's gonna just boat race Ray here, no?
Yeah, I think so. I like to see Connor's role wide receivers, if you want to call them that, go off. He had Jordy Nelson. I think he drafted Terrell Pryor in the hopes that it would be his number 2. You haven't really seen him have like a good game yet in that offense. Hopefully Golden Tate can put together a game. Hopefully Willie Snead can put together a game. Like I said before, I'm interested in seeing how Alvin Kamara does in that offense as well. But as far as Ray's team goes, yeah, he's got some buys. Tree Cohen, Buck Allen. I mean, if Buck Allen can get some carries in that offense, I know that the team or the coaching staff don't like him as much. He needs to have some volume in that offense in order for him to perform well. Hopefully Stephon Diggs plays. I really like him as just a general piece on his team. I think he's a wide receiver he could build around for the future. For sure. And we'll see how Brendan Roethlisberger bounces back. I mean, when he gives a post-game interview and says that he doesn't think he has it anymore, you really wonder like where his mind state is at, because he still has like some good pieces in that offense between Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant.
I love Bell. But does Ray really need this one? I mean, he's 2-3 if he loses, and I expect him to lose, by the way. That's my official pick. But he's going to be 2-4, and that's a hard hole to climb out of. So, if Ray can get a good waiver wire
so I would
pick,
say in that regard, then he does need it.
He really does need this one. Moving on, we'll go ahead and we'll check out the
one more thing about Ray's team too is he has Sterling Shepard starting that week too. He's going to be like the main the beneficiary of all those injuries happening to all the wide receivers in that offense.
Assuming he's healthy, because he was one of the guys that got hurt. So we'll go ahead and we'll check out the D's Nates versus the Pain Train. Don't spend a whole lot of time on this one, Carlo, but it's really, really close. Who wins?
This is the closest point projection I've seen in these matchups we've done so far. They're both 1-4 teams. I have them in my pooper section. So in the grand scheme of things, this matchup doesn't really mean much, but I know that, they care about what we have to say about their teams. This is like a hard one. This could go either way, really. Tom Brady has a nice matchup in the division against the Jets, whereas Aaron Rodgers has a matchup against Minnesota, which I don't think he's in the past has done too well. Hopefully Gronk plays. What's your opinion on this one?
I think at the end of the day, you're going to see the team with more raw talent win out, and you just look at some of the guys on Alex's team: Aaron Rodgers, Doug Martin, Amari Cooper can't be horrible forever, right? If Gronk plays, Martellus Bennett. Those are just better players than what Nate's got. I mean, you got Tom Brady and Kelvin Benjamin and Kirk Cousins, and that's pretty much it. And I just think at the end of the
I wouldn't be surprised if some people started trading for Amari Cooper in our league, just trying to buy low.
Yeah, it's tricky though, because Alex is a very name brand oriented fantasy owner, and it'll be tricky to get him away from there. I'm going to say Alex wins this one, going away. I don't. I know where the projection's at. Alex might make a couple trades or a couple waiver wire.
I'm going to say Nate just to disagree with you.
Just to disagree with me, all right. But I don't think Nate's got the horses for this one. But he is projected to win, so what the hell do I know? We'll move on to your game here, Carlo. I know you're itching to talk about it. Rabbit College Rampage 2-3. Visit the 3-2 Queef Wellingtons. You're projected to win by 12. My dad doesn't have a defense in, so this is a pretty even projection as well. You nervous at all without Odell Beckham?
Yes. I mean, I still like my wide receiver depth. I got Julio. I got Keenan Allen, who always has a nice baseline of catches. Devontae Adams, who seems to be getting a lot of red zone touches. I remember when I joined the league 5 years ago, your dad really liked my Zach Ertz pick. So I know, and looking at his tight ends right now, he has Julius Thomas and George Kittle starting. So I know he would probably like having Zach Ertz in his starting lineup for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think eventually, at the end of the day, your balanced roster will be too much for him. I think you're going to pick up the win, and then we're going to see my dad.
JHI is due. JHI is due to have some sort of breakout game. We haven't seen his best game yet. That's another one of those players that I could see teams in the league that are trying to make a playoff push try to buy low on if your dad is trying to trade away some pieces for maybe some draft picks.
Yeah, I think you'll actually see my dad make a move for in the way of the fire sale if you end up beating him. The final game this week is what? Is that it? Was that it? Was that the last one?
We already did Joe and Pat.
Oh, I don't think we did.
We did Adam and Steve.
I don't think we did mine. You have Murder Muppets versus Man Bear Pig. 3-2 teams. I got the 22-point projection without a defense. Am I going to win this one, or do you think maybe AJ's got a shot here?
Yeah, he's got Jared Goff playing against Saxonville, so I don't see Jared Goff having much of a good game. I guess he has to hope Christian McCaffrey has a good game. Duke Johnson, I mean, he's listed as a running back, but he has to be like the lead wide receiver in that offense. He just catches so many passes at the expense of Isaiah Crowell, who's on my team. So hopefully maybe Duke Johnson can put together a good game for him, while at the same time Isaiah Crowell has a good game. But I mean, I think that's more wishful thinking. We'll see if Gillislee can bounce back and actually start to have some meaningful games in the Patriots offense.
Yeah, he's just got to get in the end zone. He's had 2 good games and 3 bad games. So
I like I remember you got a lot of flack for your Pierre Garçon pick before the season started. He's the number 1 receiver in that offense. So I guess you get the last laugh considering that he's actually had some good games.
I told you the day after the draft he was going to catch 100 passes, and it looks like he's on pace for it. So he is a number 1. I mean, he's not that great of a player in general. But he's just got a lot of opportunities. High end number 2 wide receiver in our league for sure. But looking ahead to the rest of the season, one segment we did last week we did with Ray was the opportunity to talk some smack to your opponent. So Carlo, why don't you go ahead and take a minute here or whatever, and just talk a bunch of trash to, my dad or to, the rest of the league, whatever you want to do. The floor is yours.
Talk some smack. Well, as far as your dad goes, his second overall pick with Paul Perkins, his third overall pick was Zay Jones, and they've done nothing this year. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey was a nice pickup in the 6th round. He seems to be like the top dog in that Philadelphia wide receiver offense. But I mean, he really squandered an opportunity to have a good team this year with totally Jones in the second and third overall pick in his draft this year. I mean, Zay Jones, I think he only has like 2 catches this entire year. And then Paul Perkins, he seemed to have been usurped by Darkwa and Gallman in that offense. So, I mean, I think he could have better utilized those draft picks to get some other good players. Players like Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, which were both on your team.
This is some horrible trash talk right now. You gotta call him stupid and stuff like that. If you're gonna talk trash.
I mean, I think
you can't just negatively analyze his team. That's not trash talk.
There's no better trash talk than negatively analyzing someone's draft picks, for sure.
All right, for sure. And one last segment I want to do here real quick is just kind of talking about maybe there's some trades out there you think maybe would benefit both teams out there in the league. I know guys are really hesitant to trade, being that this is a keeper league and everything. Carlo, are there any any matches you see out there in the UML?
Yeah. I think if really wants to win a championship this year, having T.Y. Hilton and Antonio Brown is a nice 1-2 punch. Emmanuel Sanders is a nice third wide receiver, but I think he could probably go to a team like Joe and, make some offers on a guy like John Brown or maybe a guy like Sammy Watkins if he continues to have some good games. Joe has some wide receiver depth. He has the ability to make some trades, and I know that Kevin's team has some depth. So I think maybe each team can find some common ground and make a trade happen. So I mean, that's a match right there. As far as the other teams go, I still think Connor's team has a shot to make the playoffs and make some noise as well. I think he really hoped that Terrell Pryor was going to be the number 2 for his wide receivers. So maybe he could, maybe him and Kevin could have some competition and trying to make a deal with Joe's team to get a wide receiver, or even with my team. If the injuries continue to pile up with my team, I wouldn't be opposed to dealing one of my wide receivers. It's like I'm just plugging my team, but maybe Tim can make a move if he just continues to have this unbelievable season, to be quite frank. And then I mean, as far as like the other teams go, I'd actually really like to hear your thoughts. I mean, again, Joe's team with his wide receivers I could see Joe making a move.
Sure. My team is open for business.
Not your team, but just in the general landscape.
My team might end up sneaking into the playoffs, but I have good players on my team, and I'm obviously building for the future. So if those teams want anything, they got to find teams like mine that have give somebody 3 B's to get an A+. Go and like lose the trade. I mean, like what's more important? I lost the trade or I won the championship. Like if a team like yours, Carlo, went out and got another stud running back or something, you could it would go a long way towards you competing with Kevin. And that's the thing. I know guys are hesitant to trade away your good players, and it makes sense. Why would you want to trade away your best players? But it's important to build your team in the best way possible, and to just as important as it is to know when you're a contender, it's as important to know that you're not. Okay. And if you're sitting there and you're 2-3 and you snuck out 2 wins against bad teams, or you're 1-4, maybe look into trading. If you're like Nate, trade Tom Brady. Steve, trade Jordan Howard just for this year. Trade them without keeper rights. You
made a good point. I feel like this whole trade thing, this doesn't only apply to teams that are making a playoff push. This also applies to the pooper teams. You have teams like AJ and you have teams like Alex that have a lot of players that are, kept in the late rounds right now that they drafted this past year that, they're not going to have on their team next year. So I would start maybe making some trades like some of their players that they have kept early, and maybe either trade those players for more draft picks or maybe trade for some players that are kept late in the late rounds. Maybe if you're a team that's building, maybe make a solid offer to a team like Kevin, who, is favored to win the championship this year. Maybe someone really believes in Dak Prescott and wants to throw their entire team at Kevin to get him. Maybe they want to throw their entire team to get T.Y. Hilton. Those are two building block players that Kevin has kept in the 16th and 18th rounds. And, teams that can build with players that they have kept in those late rounds, those are the teams that can win championships. We've seen it with Connor. We've seen it with even your team, Doug.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that's actually going to do it for the 6th episode of the UML podcast. Carlo, thanks so much for joining us here today. Thanks to Connor.
Yeah, respect to Ray and Nate and all the other people that have been on the podcast so far. This is like one of the coolest. This is the coolest. We're really fortunate to be in a league that has a commissioner that does a podcast like this.
Well, gee whiz, Huckleberry, thank you very much. But guys, if you want to be on the podcast, please let me know. We want to hear from everybody, and I know schedules can get kind of tight, but at the end of the day, it's important to have everyone's voice heard. Not everyone needs to do it the same way. I think it's actually better that people don't do it the same way. If you have any ideas for segments for the podcast, please let us know either via UML chat or via the comment section down below this video. If you want to be on the podcast, again, please let us know. If you only want to be on a podcast with 3 people so you don't have to do half the talking, that's fine as well. But until next time, be sure to set your lineups, and konnichiwa, bitches.